Imagine carrying the weight of destroyed worlds on your soul. Think of a hero who saved his home, became the instrument of annihilation for countless others. How do you live with that truth? And more importantly, is redemption even possible when the echo of billions of voices reverberates in your mind? Get ready to delve into the tormented psyche of Norrin Radd, the Silver Surfer, and discover what happens when cosmic duty clashes with a being's conscience. In a distant and peaceful corner of the cosmos, there existed Zenla, a planet of unparalleled beauty, serenity, and technological advancement. Its inhabitants, including the young astronomer Norrin Radd, lived in a society that had transcended most material limitations and social conflicts that plague other civilizations. They dedicated themselves to the pursuit of knowledge, art, philosophical contemplation, and universal harmony. Norrin, in particular, was a being of brilliant mind and pure heart, who found his greatest joy in observing the stars, researching the mysteries of the universe, and in his love for his companion, the ethereal Shalabal. Life on Zenla was an ode to perfection, a testament to what a truly evolved civilization could achieve. However, this idyllic existence was about to be brutally interrupted by a force that defied comprehension. A colossal shadow approached, a cosmic entity whose name was whispered in terrifying legends among the stars. Galactus, the devourer of worlds. His hunger was insatiable, and he consumed the vital energy of entire planets to sustain his own vast existence. Zenla, vibrant and full of life, with its energetic aura, was his next target, an irresistible cosmic meal for the hungry entity. Fear spread like a silent plague among the Zenlavians, an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. How could they confront a being whose scale and power were unimaginable, capable of extinguishing civilizations with a mere gesture? Surrender meant the complete annihilation of everything they knew and loved. It was in this moment of abyssal despair that Norrin Radd, driven by an unconditional love for his people and for the sweet Shalabal, made a decision that would not only seal his own destiny forever, but also alter that of countless other worlds. In an act of supreme sacrifice and altruistic desperation, he voluntarily presented himself before the imposing presence of Galactus. With a courage that bordered on madness, Norrin pleaded for the life of his planet. His proposal was clear. He would explore the vast cosmos in search of new uninhabited worlds, or worlds with little sentient life that could sat Galactus's hunger, in exchange for the guarantee that Zenla would be spared forever. This promise, a pact with cosmic destiny itself, marked the starting point of an astonishing transformation, both physical and psychological. The psychology behind his initial decision lies in extreme altruism, the ability to everything for a greater good. He was willing to become an instrument, a means to an end, believing that the preservation of his world would justify any burden. But the true and terrible consequence of this sacrifice was something that Norrin Radd, in his initial purity, could not even begin to comprehend, nor the profound loneliness that awaited him. There was something, however, that no one, not even Galactus, saw coming: the slow and painful awakening of a conscience amidst the devastation he would be forced to witness. The process of Norrin Radd's transformation into the Silver Surfer was not merely an extraordinary physical metamorphosis, but a profound and traumatic rupture in his psyche, one that would irremediably separate him from his past. Upon being imbued with the power cosmic by Galactus, Norrin acquired abilities that defied mortal comprehension. His skin became an impenetrable silver shield, capable of withstanding the harshness of space and the most volatile energies. He gained the ability to travel at speeds that distorted time and space on his legendary board, and his senses were amplified to encompass the vast reaches of the universe. However, this gift came with a terrible price, a curse disguised as power. Galactus, master of mind and energy, to ensure the absolute obedience and unquestioning efficacy of his new herald, subtly suppressed Norrin's emotional memories. He dulled his capacity to feel empathy for the lives he helped destroy, creating a psychic barrier between the herald and the suffering he would inevitably cause. The intention was to make him a mere instrument, devoid of remorse, hesitation, or any moral questioning. However, the essence of Norrin Radd, his noble spirit, and the strength of his inherent morality could not be completely obliterated. Although the most vivid memories and deepest feelings were attenuated, the remnant of his original consciousness continued to fight, like a stubborn ember beneath the ashes. Each planet visited, each vibrant civilization he presented to Galactus as an energy target, was a silent stab in his soul. The internal conflict was excruciating and constant. The imposed loyalty to the devourer violently clashed with the deeply rooted moral values he possessed before his transformation. He was forced to be an accomplice in events that, in his deepest essence, he abhorred and considered the height of cosmic tragedy. From a psychological perspective, the Silver Surfer experienced an extreme state of cognitive dissonance, a phenomenon where two opposing beliefs or values coexist in an individual's mind, generating intense discomfort. His mind was divided between the action he was compelled to perform and his intrinsic belief that this action was morally wrong and devastating. This discrepancy generated profound psychological distress, manifested in his eternal melancholy, his almost absolute silence, and the aura of sadness that accompanied him. He was a being of immense power, capable of shaping cosmic energy, but his greatest prison was not the vacuum of space, but the incessant torment in his own mind. Galactus's empathetic suppression was a brutal attempt to create a perfect herald, but it failed to completely eradicate Norrin's humanity. This constant clash between who he was and who he was forced to become was the source of his deepest and most enduring suffering. And it was there, in this abyss of internal conflict, in this moral limbo between duty and conscience, that everything began to crumble for the Silver Surfer, setting the stage for a dark evolution and an eventual but painful quest for redemption. The mind of the Silver Surfer, though not intrinsically villainous in the sense of desiring evil, began to mold itself in a peculiar and somber way under the overwhelming weight of his existence as Galactus's herald. He was a forced participant in cosmic-scale events that resulted in the annihilation of countless lives. This involuntary, yet inescapable, complicity structured a layer of resilient darkness within his psyche, a melancholic resignation to his new and terrible reality. He was not a being who delighted in destruction. On the contrary, he delivered it with a palpable, silent pain, which made his situation even more agonizing and tragic. His silver beauty hid a soul in constant agony. Despite his immense power, the Surfer was, in essence, a prisoner. His mind, though with some suppressed memories and dulled empathy, was not entirely empty. He witnessed the beauty and complexity of each world he encountered, felt the vital energy emanating from vibrant civilizations, and then was obligated, by his programming and the fear of Zenlai's destruction, to hand them over to be consumed. This repetition of traumatic events did not completely harden him as Galactus desired. Instead, it created cumulative trauma that manifested in his aura of perpetual sadness, in his distant gaze, and in his self-imposed solitude. The Surfer's almost absolute silence, his often contemplative posture as he glided through the void, and his profound reluctance to engage with the beings of the planets he visited were external manifestations of deep internal suffering and a self-imposed emotional detachment to protect his own sanity. He was a cosmic phantom, a herald of calamity who could barely endure his own existence, carrying a burden that few could even conceive. To understand this evolution of his psyche, we can draw parallels with the psychology of trauma and post-traumatic stress in human contexts, albeit on an unimaginable cosmic scale. Individuals exposed to repeated traumatic events can develop coping mechanisms such as depersonalization or emotional numbing, a way to dissociate from pain and responsibility to survive. The Silver Surfer was not insane in the traditional sense, but his mind was adapting to a distorted reality where his survival and that of his home planet depended on delivering other worlds to Galactus's insatiable hunger. He was conditioned to seek, identify, and deliver. But the irreducible remnant of his conscience made him suffer with each new discovery, with each condemned civilization. His curse was to witness the tragedy he orchestrated, without being able to intervene at the crucial moment. The darkness was not in his heart, but in the inevitability of his function and the pain of a trapped conscience. But the true monster, overwhelming regret and corroding guilt, was still dormant, waiting for the moment to awaken in its full, devastating force, propelling him towards a redemption he didn't even know was possible. For the Silver Surfer, the point of no return was not a singular act of transgression or an ill-considered decision, but a gradual accumulation of compelled choices that, together, transformed him into something he barely recognized. Each time he pointed a new world, vibrant with life and culture, to Galactus's hungry attention, he crossed another invisible line, solidifying his role as a herald of annihilation. Norrin Radd's view of the universe and his own place within it drastically changed. He went from a peaceful guardian of his home to an unwilling, yet fundamental, collaborator in a chain of catastrophic cosmic events. This was his new and cruel reality. For Zenla to exist, others had to perish, a moral equation impossible to solve without pain. This situation imposed a moral and ethical dilemma of cosmic proportions, a burden that few beings could bear. The Silver Surfer did not choose this function. It was imposed upon him by extreme necessity and by the sheer power of Galactus. He was programmed to fulfill the role of herald, and his capacity for empathy, though dulled, was never completely eradicated. However, in his moments of clarity, amidst the cold vacuum of space, Norrin Radd's conscience would reopen, brutally forcing him to confront the magnitude of his actions. He saw the terror in the eyes of the inhabitants of the worlds he visited, heard their silent screams of despair, and felt their fear. And this perception tore at what remained of his soul, inflicting a pain that transcended the physical. The rationalization that his world had been spared was a fragile lifeboat for his tormented mind, a justification that could barely sustain itself in the face of the horror he witnessed. The Surfer was constantly forced to make terrible choices, and the weight of these choices led him to a profound existential crisis. He was not a monster, but his actions made him an agent of terror. The audience is then brought into a disturbing dilemma. What if, in a universe where overwhelming cosmic forces operate with their own logic, the sacrifice of many is the only logic possible for the preservation of something he desperately loves? This is the harsh truth that the Silver Surfer personifies. He's not a villain by choice or by malice, but by circumstance. He's the walking tragedy of a good being, compelled to perform unthinkable acts to save his own civilization. His journey raises a disquieting question that echoes through the stars. When survival becomes the only viable option, what is the limit of what one is willing to do? And what if he was right in his initial sacrifice, even if it made him an instrument of devastation for others? This is the painful truth that the Silver Surfer carries, a question that resonates through the void of space, a scar on his silver soul that can never be fully healed. The psychological analysis of the Silver Surfer reveals that his logic of destruction was not rooted in intrinsic malice or a sadistic desire, but rather in a forced adaptation to a horrific role and a cold, desperate calculation to survive and, more importantly, to uphold the promise that Zenla would be spared. His mind, though under the coercive control of Galactus, operated under a singular imperative: to find planets with the vital energy necessary to sat his master's hunger. The part of his conscience that Galactus failed to completely suppress allowed Norrin to grasp the enormity of his actions, the tragedy unfolding, but he was compelled to act against his own morality, becoming an accomplice to the catastrophe. To endure this reality, he needed to emotionally distance himself. He did not see individualized lives in his targets. Instead, his perception was adjusted to see energetic masses, an imposed perspective that allowed the continuation of his terrible function. Studies on depersonalization and dissociation, phenomena frequently observed in situations of extreme trauma or in individuals subjected to prolonged and overwhelming psychological stress, can help us understand his mental state. The Silver Surfer, for long and countless periods, operated as a cosmic automaton, a mere instrument of Galactus, with his own humanity and feelings of guilt suppressed or dormant so that he could fulfill his terrible and inevitable mission. It is an extreme form of psychic defense, where the individual disconnects from emotionally charged reality to bear the unbearable, to continue functioning even under the weight of atrocities. He was there, physically present, gliding through the stars, but his soul was in a state of forced denial, an existential limbo. However, this suppression was, by nature, imperfect and fragile. In his moments of lucidity, of profound cosmic solitude, Norrin Radd's conscience would surge with full force, an overwhelming tide of memory and remorse, brutally confronting him with the reality of his actions. He saw the trails of destruction left by Galactus, the ruins of prosperous and vibrant civilizations reduced to dust, and the crushing weight of guilt overwhelmed him, a pain that could not be alleviated by speed or distance. It was as if the deepest and most human part of his being was in constant war with the persona imposed by the power cosmic, an internal battlefield where morality fought for survival. Guilt, remorse, and despair accumulated, creating a bleak and desolate mental landscape. He could not escape himself, no matter how fast he flew or how far he ventured through the galaxies. It was not madness that moved him. It was an imposed cold calculation, a cruel necessity, but with an unbearable emotional cost, a perpetual torment that shaped his existence and would eventually lead him to a desperate quest for redemption. What remains after the relentless passage of Galactus and the unwilling participation of the Silver Surfer is not just a physical void, but a legacy of cosmic chaos and incalculable suffering reverberating through the stars. Entire planets, once brimming with life, cultures, and dreams, are now mere empty husks, celestial skeletons, civilizations erased from existence as if they had never been. The Surfer, through an act of rebellion, and with the help of heroic figures like the Fantastic Four, who helped him rekindle his own conscience and break free from his master's psychic yoke, managed to sever the chains of his servitude to Galactus. However, the scars of his servitude remain indelibly etched on his soul, an eternal mark of his participation in a scale of annihilation so vast that few beings could even conceive it. Freed from Galactus's direct tyranny, he did not immediately become a being of peace or joyful liberation. Instead, Norrin Radd transformed into the cosmic repentant, a solitary and melancholic wanderer through space. His journey from that point onward is an incessant and painful quest for redemption, a desperate attempt to atone for the acts he was forced to participate in. He now uses the power cosmic, which was once a tool of destruction, to protect life, to intervene in cosmic injustices, to be a herald of hope instead of ruin. His presence in the universe is a constant reminder of difficult choices, the lasting consequences of servitude, and an individual's capacity to fight against their own imposed nature. With every life he saves, every injustice he corrects, he seeks to appease the storm in his soul. But the echo of lost worlds, the silent voices of the civilizations he helped condemn, never leave him, haunting him in his moments of solitude. This trajectory shapes the universe as he becomes a powerful symbol of second chances, the ability to overcome trauma, and the possibility of finding new purpose even after being stained by terrible acts. The philosophical reflection that emerges from his story is profound and disturbing. Who are we to judge someone who was compelled, under the threat of their home's annihilation, to make such terrible choices to protect what they loved most? Is it truly possible to redeem oneself from acts of cosmic magnitude, especially when agency was limited by coercion and psychic suppression? The Silver Surfer is the personification of the incessant pursuit of meaning and purpose in the vast and indifferent cosmos, a tragic figure who carries the burden of a dark and inescapable past. His existence is a mirror to the human condition, showing that even in the depths of space, the greatest battle is fought within ourselves, between imposed duty, past guilt, and a conscience that refuses to be silenced. But perhaps he was not the last to face such a heavy dilemma, and somewhere else in the universe, a new cycle of sacrifice and redemption may just be beginning, echoing the eternal struggle between light and shadow in the heart of a being. The story of the Silver Surfer is not just about cosmic powers and intergalactic travel. It's a deep dive into the psyche of a being who is forced to become an instrument of annihilation for the sake of his own home's survival. He forces us to question the limits of morality, sacrifice, and redemption. Can a soul, stained by actions that cost billions of lives, find peace? The echo of lost worlds will always follow him, a somber reminder of a past he cannot erase, but one that propels him towards a future of protection. And so, the Silver Surfer continues his journey, a symbol that, even in the depths of space, the greatest battle is fought within ourselves, the incessant struggle between imposed duty and a conscience that refuses to be silenced. Have you ever considered the price of your own survival?